advance our technologies and civilization.
We have to continue to explore, continue to push the boundaries. And I think really throughout the history of humankind, we've always explored. And so when people ask why we explore, I would like to ask back, what type of society would we be if we lost that curiosity? Is that somewhere that we'd want to live?
Space Center in Florida, I'm Daryl Nail, joined by NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. So good to have you here. Here's more about the crew that's going into space today. I'm Daryl Nail with NASA. Welcome back to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, here with NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. Here's more about the crew that's going into space today. NASA astronaut Anne McClain, she is your Crew 10 commander, making her second trip to low Earth orbit. The Spokane, Washington native and U.S. Army colonel was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013 and has spent a total of 204 days in space and completed 2 spacewalks totaling 13 hours and 8 minutes. She's very competent and, as you've described, a very excellent leader.
Absolutely, a natural leader, and it is so thrilling to be here watching her do what she was born to do and leading this crew to space today. Sitting next to her is the pilot for Crew 10, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers. She was selected as a NASA astronaut in 2021. The Colorado native graduated from the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs and is a major in the U.S. Air Force. This is her first space flight, and she's pretty excited about it. Absolutely. Takuya Onishi. He is the JAXA astronaut, serving as a mission specialist. Today's flight will mark Onishi's second trip to the space station. He was selected as an astronaut by Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency in 2009 and has logged 113 days in space, and he will eventually be the station commander. Yeah, that will be a very nice moment to see as Anne hands over those leadership reins over to Tak. Transfer of controls from her as the commander of the SpaceX vehicle over to Tak to be commander of the space station. So great opportunity for leadership for both of these experienced crew members. And the second mission specialist is Kirill Peskov. The Roscosmos cosmonaut was selected as a cosmonaut in 2018 and will be also making his first spaceflight today. This is really the ultimate of Kirill's very curious and adventurous nature. I hear he loves to discover all aspects of and areas of Russia and the U.S. now in his SUV, and he is always exploring, so this will be the ultimate of his exploration today for him and for all of his crew. And all 4 of these crew members are pilots. They speak that common language of aviation. That must be comforting to all of them. I think so, and I think it has brought them closer together as a crew. They can almost read each other's minds, they say. Sometimes, they don't even need words, and they have this shared sentiment, this shared language. It makes them a very synchronous, cohesive crew. And for the past year and a half, that crew has been training diligently to be ready to help conduct science investigations aboard station. The crew will perform biomedical research and technology demonstrations over the 4-month expedition. Commander Anne McClain is participating in the Canadian Space Agency space experiment involving heart health.
This headband is actually connected to sensors throughout my body, and they are collecting real-time data on my heart rate, oxygen saturation, and my respiratory rate. Imagine the day where you go see your doctor because you're concerned about your heart health, and they give you these sensors to wear, and they get this massive, comprehensive look at your cardiovascular health over multiple days doing multiple activities.
Another science investigation on board involves tiny materials inspired by our own DNA that could help be used here on Earth with those people who suffer from arthritis in their knees. Let's go back now to Megan Cruz, who is standing by with NASA Acting Administrator Janet Petro.
Yeah, that's right. Acting administrator since January, and then, of course, before that, center director here at Kennedy since 2021. And how does it feel to be back here to watch another crew launch?
Oh my God, I can't, Megan, tell you how excited I am to be here. And I was here the whole week. We had unfortunately had the scrub on Wednesday, but I cannot explain the feeling of coming back home. Oh. I love this center. I love this workforce. I love the mission that we have here at the center. So it's very exciting. In DC, it's not my normal job jar down here at the Kennedy Space Center, being center director, where, you know, I had the workforce and the mission. So I'm super excited to be back here and to be able to witness this launch later tonight.
Yes, absolutely. Launch is going to happen here shortly. And you know, I know we've been talking about this a lot in the broadcast, that every single member of Crew 10 is a pilonaut. Yes, actually. A pilot, as are you. Did you get to talk to the crew? I see that they've signed your hat.
I absolutely did. So I got to see them a couple times. So when they landed at the landing facility here, I got to see them and greet them. And that's where they gave me this hat,
That's
which
amazing.
is so cool. I've never gotten a present from a crew before. So Crew 10, hats off to them for giving me, and they did sign it. And then on Tuesday, we got to go what's called Behind the Glass tour and talk to them. They're behind a glass because they're in quarantine, and we got to talk to them and ask them questions and talk to them and just see how they were doing. And so that's pretty special. So
Yeah,
I got to
that is.
talk to all of them, all of those pilots there, and they are super excited, ready to go.
Yeah, and speaking of excited, you know, we have NASA astronauts Sunny Williams, Butch Wilmore, Nick Hague, plus Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. They're going to come back shortly after Crew 10 arrives on station. During a live press conference from station recently, Butch and Sunny said they're going to miss space.
Absolutely, because you got to think about the astronauts. And by the way, last week from Johnson Space Center's Mission Control, I did get to talk to Butch, Sunny, Nick, and a little bit to Don Pettit there. So I got to talk to them as well. But you got to figure they, you know, to be selected and trained and the passion that they have to go to space, you know, for them, it's got to be, this is what they do for a living. Mm-hmm. This is what they're going to do. And in fact, I would bet they might have some mixed emotions, for leaving, because, you know, every time you get to go to space, which is what all astronauts want to do, you never know. It might be your last time because you might not be selected for another mission or whatever. So I bet they have mixed emotions leaving their colleagues up there at the space station. I'm sure they're anxious to get home and put their feet on Earth and spend time with their family, but I think that they have enjoyed their time in space. You know, when I said Behind the Glass to Butch and Sunny a while ago, I asked them, and they had told me that they hope they get to stay a little bit longer than 8 days in space. That was at their Behind the Glass. Now, I don't know if they meant to stay as long as they got to, but I know that they are a valued member of this expedition crew, and they've done amazing research. They've done spacewalks together. I think Sunny now holds a record for the most amount of time in the vacuum of space. So they have to be very, very proud of what they've accomplished. They were very much integrated as a crew and did a lot of work on the station, research and science experiments.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think they're going to miss space. I think so.
Well, Janet, no mixed emotions here. It was great seeing you. I'm going to put this in a jar of memories of today because this was wonderful, and we're about to see launch.
All right.
Great
Thank
to
you,
have
Megan.
Janet.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll send it back to Daryl and Jessica.
All right, thank you both. And just behind them, as you saw in that shot, was the Vehicle Assembly Building, a very iconic building here at NASA, where we recently reached a major milestone in NASA's Artemis program. That's, of course, preparing for the first crewed mission around the moon in over 50 years. Engineers finished stacking the twin solid rocket boosters for Artemis 2. These 177-foot tall boosters will provide most of the 8.8 million pounds of thrust needed to launch 4 astronauts on a 10-day lunar journey. There's a shot of the core stage, which they're starting to work on now. Since November, crews have used a massive crane to lift and assemble those booster segments. They're each packed with avionics and motors that will safely detach after launch. Now, with the completion of that, they're going to focus on the SLS. Artemis 2 will carry NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, and Christina Cook, along with Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen, on a mission around the moon. So here's Jeremy now with a little more about that.
Hey everyone, I'm Canadian Space Agency astronaut Colonel Jeremy Hansen, mission specialist for the Artemis 2 mission. I'm here at the Johnson Space Center here in Houston, Texas, where we normally do most of our training. But every once in a while, we like to change it up a bit. Reed, Victor, Christine, and I recently spent several days in Iceland, trading in our spacesuits for hiking gear to study its geology and surroundings. Why Iceland? Well, as you can see, it has a similar landscape and terrain to the moon, with various volcanic rocks like basalts and breccias, and has limited to no vegetation. The Nordic island has been a lunar training site for NASA astronauts since the days of the Apollo missions. My crewmates and I teamed up with scientists and geology experts to explore the huge boulders, formations, and volcanic craters across the lava fields. During our journey, we stopped at various spots to discuss what we observed.
Some of the really fine material is compacting into what's like the glue holding this together.
And even tested different types of tools to collect rock samples. Although we won't be landing on the moon during our mission, this field work and navigation practice will allow us to make informed observations when passing the lunar surface and pave the way for future Artemis crew training. And that's your Artemis Moon Minute.
For more Artemis updates, scan the QR code on your screen right now, or visit nasa.gov/Artemis-Roman numeral 2 or II. You don't have to worry about getting updates there, though, because, Jessica, you are friends and former classmates with both Victor Glover and Christina Cook.
Yeah, that's right. They are my astronaut classmates, like brothers and sisters, and it has been so exciting to see this Artemis journey. I was here for the Artemis 1 launch, and that just made it all so real. We saw the hardware, we saw the vehicle, we saw the launch, and we knew that the next time that vehicle launched, it would be with my friends and colleagues on board. So it was an incredibly exciting moment for all of us as astronauts.
That launch coming in February of 2025, currently scheduled on the calendar. Let's go back now to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California.
Thanks, Daryl. As we continue to count down, let's take a closer look at the vehicles that will be taking Crew 10 to the International Space Station today. Falcon 9 is a two-stage rocket developed and manufactured by SpaceX, known for its safe, reliable, and cost-effective access to space. It's also the first orbital-class rocket capable of reflight. And sitting at the top of Falcon 9, Dragon and its trunk stand over 26 feet tall. There are two windows on the spacecraft, plus one underneath the nose cone. The nose cone opens shortly after launch to expose the forward bulkhead thrusters and docking mechanism that will connect with the space station. Dragon's trunk holds solar cells, which power Dragon while it's in free flight, and the trunk can also carry unpressurized cargo. Now, Dragon has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the space station. There are currently 4 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions that have docked to the station. There you can see them on your screen. That is Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, and Freedom. Now, designed to be the safest spacecraft ever flown, Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit and beyond.
And Dragon has 16 Draco thrusters that can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing 90 pounds of force. That doesn't include the 8 Super Draco thrusters used for an abort, which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit. Dragon has flown 49 times with 15 human spaceflight missions since 2020, when Dragon became the first private spacecraft to take humans to the International Space Station. In that time, Dragon has flown over 1,000 experiments to space and 56 crew members representing 14 different countries.
Dragon has proven to be a versatile spacecraft. It can autonomously dock to the space station when outfitted with the International Space Station docking adapter, as it is for today's flight. When it's not going to the space station and in free flyer mode, the docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola. Another option that we have is the Skywalker hardware, which supports extravehicular activities as the crew used during the Polaris Dawn mission. Now, continuing down the vehicle, we do have the second stage. The second stage is powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC engine, which is optimized to perform in the vacuum of space. After stage separation, the MVAC will ignite and carry Dragon to its target orbit. Now, the Falcon 9's first and second stages are connected by the black inner stage, which houses the MVAC engine and the system that decouples the 2 stages during stage separation. And below that is the first stage.
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
Good call out. Stage 2 LOX loading has begun. Below that is the first stage, which is powered by 9 Merlin engines. These 9 Merlin engines provide the initial thrust to lift.
Dragon SpaceX reporting that we continue to track no issues with Dragon or Falcon proceeding to launch.
SpaceX Dragon, copy.
Great news, just calling out that we're tracking no issues. These 9 Merlin engines provide the initial thrust to lift Falcon 9 off of the ground through the lower, thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Now, each of these Merlin 1D engines delivers about 190,000 pounds of thrust at sea level, which gives Falcon 9 a combined 1.7 million pounds of thrust.
And after stage separation, stage 1 will return to Earth for recovery and reuse on a future mission using a combination of the Merlin sea level engines and the 4 titanium grid fins located near the top of the booster, which will guide it during its re-entry and landing. The Falcon 9 first stage is also equipped with 4 landing legs that deploy and allow for vertical landing on a drone ship or landing pad. Now today we will be attempting to return the booster to land at landing zone 1. The second stage will power Dragon into its initial low Earth orbit before separating, leaving Dragon to continue its journey to the space station using its own thrusters. About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin, exposing the guidance navigation controls that help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station. With T0 coming up in just under 15 minutes, our teams are doing a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready to go.
And we are still looking good for an on-time launch today. Both Dragon and Falcon 9 continue to be healthy. As we continue to listen and watch the countdown, our teams are preparing the vehicle for flight. Propellant loading of both RP1 and liquid oxygen began at T-minus 35 minutes. And we also heard the call a few minutes ago that the launch escape system is armed. The launch escape system is designed to propel Dragon away from Falcon 9 in the event of an emergency during launch. Now, the range, which is monitoring the keep-out zones among other key flight requirements, also continues to report no issues, and they are go to support today's launch.
And weather also continues to look good. You can see it there on your screen, clear skies. And we are still tracking a roughly less than 5% chance of violation at our target liftoff time of 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. And as you heard earlier, we're continuing to be optimistic that we're going to maintain these good conditions into launch. And as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch window driven by our planned rendezvous point, the point at which Dragon and station will meet in orbit. The station is orbiting the Earth at more than 17,000 miles per hour, and Dragon needs to catch up. That means we have to deliver Dragon to the correct orbit by timing its trajectory relative to the orbiting laboratory so that they are in the same place in orbit at the same time. So precise liftoff time is crucial for hitting that rendezvous point. And at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we would have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity, which is Saturday, March 15th at 6:41 p.m. Eastern, 3:41 p.m. Pacific. But again, everything and all the systems continue to be go. And for now, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Gary at the Johnson Space Center for a quick status update from Houston.
Hey, thank you, Anna. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, teams continue to work around the clock to monitor activities aboard the orbital outpost. Leading the teams inside the room is Flight Director T.J. Creamer. The team in Mission Control Houston, the team in Hawthorne, and the astronauts aboard the space station will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Endurance when they enter joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, the invisible boundary stretching 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers that helps us monitor all arriving and departing spacecraft, is essentially the neighborhood of the space station. Once docked, crew members in both Dragon and aboard the station will perform a series of leak checks, then work to open the spacecraft's hatch for Crew 10 to float into the station and begin their stay. We anticipate that the hatch will be opened about an hour and a half after the docking. When they enter the orbital outpost, Crew 10 will be greeted by the rest of their Expedition 72 crew and will come together for opening remarks. That's all from us here in Mission Control as the anticipation continues to build for launch in under 20 minutes. How's it looking on the Space Coast, Daryl?
We're looking great, Gary. Looking fantastic. We've got fantastic weather, 95% go. You see the beautiful shot outside of the pad there, the rocket and the spacecraft. When it launches today, the crew aboard the ISS, the destination for today's launch, will be about 260 miles over top of the west coast of Australia, so too far to see the launch. It's nice to see a rocket go off when you're on the ISS, but unfortunately it won't be the case this time.
Oh yeah, it is a wonderful thing to see when your crewmates are heading towards you. I remember a photograph that Christina Cook took of my Soyuz approaching the station, and one of these incredible opportunities that you could see the outline of the trajectory of the Soyuz as it approached, and it's such a beautiful image. It's a shame they won't be able to see it, but they will be so excited to have their crewmates come on board.
And we're about to hear from the crew here before launch. We'll hear from them after launch. It'll be special. They have some important things to say.
Oh, absolutely. I am very excited to hear these final thoughts coming from the entire crew right before launch.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll send it back to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California.
Thanks, Daryl. Our next major milestone on the countdown event will be around the T-minus 10-minute mark, which is just in about 5 seconds, when Falcon 9 launch commit criteria get checked by computers.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, displays are configured for launch. And with that, this is the pilot, Nicole Ayers. And on behalf of Crew 10, we'd like to say that today we celebrate the countless individuals all over the world that have made this journey possible. To the engineers, instructors, flight controllers, scientists, and leaders who worked tirelessly to get us here, thank you for your dedication to the safety and success of this mission. And a special thank you to our friends and families for your unwavering love and support. This mission is a testament of what humans can achieve when we work together. Go Crew 10!
Such great words from the crew. Again, and some cheering going on. You can see that on your screen.
SpaceX copies. And from the entire SpaceX team here, it's been a pleasure working together to prepare for this mission. And from all of us, good luck, Godspeed, go Crew 10, and enjoy the ride.
Great comms. That was from our core here in Hawthorne in Mission Control. Now, there are many systems in place to ensure that the rocket and the crew are both safe leading up to liftoff and during flight. And now that we are in terminal count, our teams are performing those final checks before launch.
And coming up here in just a few minutes, we will start having that stage 1 engine chill start. And now we're just over 8 minutes away from launch. Again, today's ride to orbit will be about 9 minutes, which is from the time of liftoff to second stage cutoff. And then Dragon in the second stage will continue to coast for a few minutes after that prior to separation. You'll hear some performance calls along the way as we get into the final countdown and then after liftoff. And these are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on trajectory, speed, booster performance, and other key milestones. So some of the callouts you will hear after liftoff are a combination of letters and numbers, which will mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two are 1 Alpha and 1 Bravo, which are abort modes available while the first stage is firing. And then the next round of numbers and letters you'll hear are 2 Alpha through 2 Echo, though you'll only hear the 2 Alpha call on the public loops, and those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. And then diverting a little bit from the other naming system, you will hear the call out Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland. And this call means the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort late in the second stage burn. And you'll continue to hear those different call outs along with key performance call outs from the guidance, navigation, and control officer along with the propulsion lead. We're now just under 7 minutes away from launch.
Engines are chilling in for flight.
And we just heard that confirmation that the stage 1 engine chill has started.
Yeah, exactly. That call out is because we are flowing a little bit of liquid oxygen into the engines. That's to help prepare the vehicle or the engines for the full flow of liquid oxygen into the engines. That makes sure that we don't shock the system at that full flow. Now we are still loading. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming about 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us prevent that thermal shock into the engine. So again, We have passed that T-minus 7 minute mark. Next call out will be stage 1, RP1 loading complete, which we just heard that.
And the RP1 is densified kerosene or rocket fuel that will propel the crew into orbit. All of that RP1 is now fully loaded into the rocket, and since we previously heard that second stage loading was completed. We are still loading the liquid oxygen or LOX onto the first and second stages, and this is the oxidizer needed to combine with the densified kerosene that just finished loading. The RP1 liquid propellant needs an oxidizer to combine with in order to ignite. Coming up in just under 30 seconds at that T-minus 5 minute mark, we will hear the call for Dragon to configure for terminal count and then transition over to internal power.
Tanks are pressing for Stromback retract. Dragon is in, configure for terminal count.
And there we just heard that call out for terminal count, so now Dragon onboard computers will take control of the spacecraft. And we also heard that the propellant tanks on Falcon 9 are getting ready to pressurize, adding some additional structural support to the rocket as we get ready for that strong back to retract. And that strong back provides access to Falcon 9's fueling lines.
Has started.
That strong back lower has now started, and again, that strong back provides access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for both propellant load and the different gases being loaded on board.
And what you should see on your screen is there's those clamp arms that are around the second stage just below Dragon. They're going to open up, and once they're fully open, then that strong back or the TE can begin to recline away from the vehicle. Now, initially, we are going to recline that TE just about 2 degrees away from the vehicle, and then we will fully move the TE about 45 degrees away up at T0. And they're maybe a little hard to see on your screen, but the clamp arms are opening up there. There's a better view. Looks like the clamp arms are now fully open, so that TE will begin to move away from the vehicle. Very slow and slight, but just enough to get two degrees away from the vehicle.
And then coming up in less than 30 seconds at the T-minus 3 minute mark, the first stage liquid oxygen or LOX load will complete. And we'll continue to check through a couple more fueling milestones, including one around the T-minus 2 minute mark before flight, where we'll hear liquid oxygen loading is complete on the second stage. And now you see all of those white clouds on your screen. Those are clouds of vapor, and they're completely normal, and we'll see them continue to build up as we get closer to launch. This is because liquid oxygen is super chilled, so a little of it will boil off in the warmer Florida air.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Great call out there. Stage 1.
Count and on.
Putting liquid oxygen onto stage 2, and that'll wrap up here at the T-minus 2 minute mark, just about 20 seconds from now. And once we finish propellant loading, that will mean that 1 million pounds of RP1 and liquid oxygen will be loaded onto Falcon 9 here, just under 10 seconds.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
We just heard confirmation that the stage 2 liquid oxygen loading is now complete. We are under 2 minutes away from launch. Gas closeout has also begun. So we're now isolating all of the feed lines for the different gas systems from the Falcon 9 rocket. And those gases will then get vented overboard through umbilicals and the strong back. And you just heard that call out that Dragon is an
Ground
auto
gas closeouts, expect loud venting.
Well, you can hear that venting now. Obviously, rockets are very loud, and the sound can impart pressure loads back on the rocket itself. The ton of water absorbs and prevents the sound from hitting the structure and reverberating back onto the rocket. And that call out for auto idle puts the rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over, making sure the transition to final countdown is smooth and all the flight computers on board are in sync and configured for launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And now we just heard that Falcon 9 is in startup.
Anything countdown?
And in the final countdown, less than a minute to go, and at the time of launch, the space station will be flying 260 statute miles over the west coast of Australia.
Dragon, SpaceX. Go for launch.
And great call out.
SpaceX, Dragon Crew 10, copy, go for launch.
Great call out that we're go for launch, and we do have a large crowd here in front of Mission Control.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Waiting to watch Crew 10 take off today.
T-minus 15. T-minus 10. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go SpaceX, go NASA Crew 10. Copy, 1 Alpha.
And liftoff of Crew 10 now
Vehicles pitching downrange.
Space Station. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 10. And we're continuing to get good call-outs on the first stage performance so far. We're now 40 seconds into today's flight.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Continuing to get good performance call-outs.
Throttle down.
Yeah, we are throttling down the engines in preparation for Max Q. What great timing that was. We just passed through Max Q. That's the largest structural load that the vehicle will see on ascent.
Vehicle supersonic. Stage 1 throttle up.
We're now just over 1 minute and 10 seconds into today's flight, traveling at more than 1,400 miles per hour.
Stage 1 Bravo.
And we just heard that call out for 1 Bravo, which means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. And the crew already pulling over 2 Gs. Next up, we'll have a couple of events happening in rapid succession.
Back chill started.
First will be that engine chill on the second stage impact engine, which we just heard. And then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and second stages, will be separating from one another. Then the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and continue to carry Crew 10 to orbit while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth. Now we're just 2 minutes into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling just under 4,000 miles per hour.
We're just about 20 seconds away from those events that Anna just mentioned. The 9 Merlin engines will shut down here in just about 10 seconds for MECO, stage separation, and SES-1.
Main engine cutoff.
SpaceX Dragon, 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. Copy, 2 Alpha.
Great call-outs and incredible views there on your left-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, you can see a view from stage 1. And an extremely excited crowd here in Hawthorne. Awesome views of that boost back burn on the first stage, as well as the MVAC engine igniting on the second stage. Great views there. Now the booster is in its boost back burn. This is the first of 3 burns as it makes its way back down to Earth. This will last about 45 seconds. And the Crew 10 crew is still on board Dragon, attached to Falcon 9's second stage, which you can see there on your right-hand screen.
And we're now at 3 minutes and 20 seconds into today's flight. The vehicle is traveling about 6,500 miles per hour. And they are on their way to the space station. And we did have that confirmation coming up of the boost back shutdown, and then coming up at the T+6 minute mark, And there we have our first images of the crew inside the Dragon spacecraft as they make their way into orbit. And the crew
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
continuing to get good call-outs.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
Stage 2 it continues to be on power with and it's firing until we get to that second stage engine cutoff around the 9-minute mark of flight. About 5 minutes of flight to go before Dragon will be flying free.
Some cool views there on your left-hand screen. That's the first stage booster as it's making its way back down to Earth. This is a ground tracking camera getting these awesome views.
And on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that lone Merlin vacuum engine of the second stage. We're continuing to get good performance on the second stage. And the crew's G-loads will dip right when we hit the separation events, and it's going to continue to build up until then.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
We're now at 5 minutes into today's flight with a liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Pacific, 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. Continuing to get good call-outs as Stage 1 makes its way back to Earth, and Stage 2 continues to fire, propelling Dragon into orbit.
If you're just now joining us, the 4 members of Crew 10 launched from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And they're currently on board Dragon, still attached to Falcon 9's second stage, which you're seeing there on your right-hand screen. On your left-hand screen, the first stage vehicle is making its way back down to Earth. It already completed the first of 3 burns as the boost back burn. And the next event coming up for that vehicle is going to be the entry burn.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Great call-outs there. That entry burn is coming up.
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
That entry burn is coming up here in just under 20 seconds. We'll reignite 3 of those 9 Merlin 1D engines to help slow the vehicle down as it makes its way back into the Earth's atmosphere.
We're now just over 6 minutes into today's flight as Dragon and the second stage continue traveling at over 12,000 miles per hour, making their way into orbit and on the way to the International Space Station.
There we just saw on the screen, it was very quick, but we had the entry burn, which we got some cool views of that from the ground, which is awesome. Now the next event coming up will be the landing burn for the first stage. That's coming up here in about 30 seconds.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Again, great call outs for
SpaceX Dragon, copy nominal.
Confirmation there from the crew as they continue to make their way into orbit. Now 7 minutes into today's flight, the first stage making its way back down to Earth and the second stage continuing to fire.
This is an awesome view. Let's see if we can see the center engine relight for that landing burn here in a few seconds. There's that landing burn. Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on landing zone 1.
And now that the first stage has made its way back to Earth, we're about a minute away from the second engine cutoff, which we're expecting around the 9-minute mark of today's flight. We're continuing to get good call-outs, and Dragon and all of the systems on the vehicle are performing as expected. Just over 8 minutes into today's flight, traveling more than 21,000 miles per hour.
Terminal guidance.
Hearing good call-outs. We're about 30 seconds away from that second engine cutoff, and then shortly after that, about a minute or so later, we will have orbital insertion.
SpaceX Dragon, Shannon.
SpaceX copy, Shannon.
That call out there for Shannon, and that is the call out for Shannon, Ireland, which is the final abort stage for the second stage off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for a second engine cutoff.
And back shutdown. Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And there we heard confirmation
Launch escape system disarmed.
Good confirmation of orbital insertion. Crew 10 is now well on their way to the International Space Station following a 9.5-minute flight uphill.
Now, the second stage is preparing for Dragon separation here, which should happen shortly. In about 10-15 seconds is what we're expecting. Now we're preparing for stabilizing the second stage so that we can have a smooth separation.
And there you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the crowd is going wild. There on your screen you can see that Dragon separation, that second stage making its way, and Dragon is now flying free. 10 minutes into today's flight, that was about a minute after we had that second engine cutoff and orbital insertion. And it looks like a good separation, good rates. Dragon now flying free. There on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see some first images of Crew 10 inside the Dragon Endurance spacecraft as they're now successfully in orbit.
Dragon, SpaceX, Chief Engineer on Countdown 1. On behalf of the entire Falcon team, we thank you for flying with Falcon and wish you a great mission. Over to LD.
It was an honor flying with you this evening. We wish you well on your journey and give Crew 9 our best. Thank you for flying SpaceX.
SpaceX Dragon, this is Crew 10 Commander Ann McLean. Thank you to all of the teams from across the world who contributed to the launch today. Spaceflight is tough, but humans are tougher. Days like today are made possible only when people choose to do the harder right over the easier wrong. Build relationships, choose cooperation, and believe in the inherent goodness of all people across the world. To my family and friends, without you, I would not be here. Explore boldly, live gracefully, go Crew 10. And over to pilot Nicole Ayers.
Nicole Ayers again. We're not the first humans to get to orbit, and we wouldn't be here without the bravery and hard work of those who have paved the way for human spaceflight. We now get the unique perspective of Earth without borders and get to revel in the connectedness of humanity. I would be remiss to not once again acknowledge those who helped me get here, to this wonderful view and this perspective, to the teachers, coaches, fellow officers, fellow teammates, Raptor Nation, to my friends and family that encouraged my dreams from the start. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you.
This is Mission Specialist Takuya Onishi. I want to say a huge thank you to NASA and SpaceX, especially the Falcon 9 team for the successful launch, and we are looking forward to a smooth ride to the International Space Station. 日本の皆さん、たくさんの応援ありがとうございます。9年ぶりの無重力の感覚をかみしめてます。これから先の ISS への宇宙の旅、楽しんでいきたいと思います。I will now hand the mic over to Mission Specialist Kirill.
Thanks a lot to NASA and SpaceX for this wonderful ride, and I want to say a couple of words in Russian. Пользуясь такой чудесной возможностью, хочу поздравить с 65-летием со дня начала подготовки первого отряда. И также хочу сказать спасибо большое за те знания и жизненный опыт, который мной были получены в тех стенах для того, чтобы выполнить этот полет. А также спасибо школе номер 14 города Назарова, Ульяновскому высшему авиационному училищу гражданской авиации и авиакомпании МКАР и Нордвин, где я начинал свой путь в небо. И, конечно же, спасибо большое семье и за поддержку.
Thank you, Crew 10. At this time, I can report nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
SpaceX Dragon, copy.
And such great words from Crew 10, as well as the core here in Hawthorne and Mission Control. We also got confirmation that the nose cone deploy is underway. The 6 hooks that hold the nose cone in place during the launch and ascent portions have to retract, and then the nose cone will be able to start to swing open and deploy. Now, this uncovers a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station, including the forward bulkhead thrusters and the docking hatch. Just pausing in case there were going to be any comms. And we did have good confirmation, good checkouts of the 12 Draco thrusters around the service section. Now, 4 to go after we get the nose cone open, and then the ECLIS, the environmental control and life support system, activated inside of Dragon. Now, soon the crew will be able to get their visors open and get out of their suits and settle in for the ride to the space station.
And now we're just waiting for confirmation that the nose cone has fully deployed with all of the hooks open. But just to recap a little bit, we did have a successful liftoff of Crew 10 about 18 minutes ago at 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. And following an approximately 9-minute ride after liftoff, we had that orbital insertion, and Dragon and Crew 10 were flying free and well on their way to the International Space Station. They now have an approximately a 28-hour journey before they do reach their destination of the space station, and that docking is targeted for tomorrow, March 15th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, to the forward-facing port of the station's Harmony module. Between now and then, Dragon will perform a series of burns as it catches up to the space station, and that first burn will be a phase burn about 30 minutes from now at 4:52 p.m. Pacific, 7:52 p.m. Eastern.
And the nose cone is about 75% open at this point. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years with Dragon. In addition to flying people, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft also enables researchers the opportunity to fly critical science to orbit. And so far, SpaceX and Dragon have carried over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit, both to the International Space Station and on our free flyer missions. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing studies enabled by Dragon and the space station test Dragon and the space station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will be needed for future long-duration exploration missions. Now, every mission yields critical science and research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. And flights like today's help us continue to lay this foundation for our future among the stars and continue our mission to make life multiplanetary.
Once Crew 10 does arrive to the International Space Station, they will, of course, partake in some additional science and research. They will have over 200 experiments that they will contribute to during their time aboard the International Space Station. Again, we're just standing by for confirmation that that nose cone has fully deployed. And we may also get some additional look inside the cabin of the crew.
As we patiently wait for those views, we are trying to see if we can get some views. We were seeing some views from the second stage. This looks like it might be a view from the forward.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal nose cone opening and forward bulkhead Draco checkouts.
SpaceX Dragon copies and confirm nominal E-course activation and go for visors.
And there we heard confirmation that the nose cone has fully deployed and that the crew is now able to lift their visors. And there again, we're seeing some views inside the Dragon Endurance spacecraft with Crew 10 on their way to the International Space Station.
Affirm, you are go to open visors.
Copy.
Great calls there. They're go to open visors, which means that shortly they'll also be able to get out of their suits and get comfortable for the entire ride on Dragon to the International Space Station.
And from left to right on your screen, there's Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers, NASA astronaut Anne McClain, and then far on the right-hand side of your screen is JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi.
And there you can see that they are in microgravity as their tablets are floating around there. They do have them attached to a little string that helps allow them so that, you know, as they're strapped into their seats, they don't lose their tablets.
We're now just over 20 minutes into today's flight following that successful liftoff at 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific. There you're getting an over-the-shoulder view between the commander and pilot, so Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers.
If you're just now joining us, you are watching live Crew 10 out in space in the Dragon vehicle. They lifted off from Space Launch Complex 39A at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time.
Dragon SpaceX, there are about 3 minutes remaining in the current ground station pass. At this time, you're welcome to introduce your zero-G indicator. We're using the full crew cam so we can see all 4 crew members right now.
All right, copies. Thank you, SpaceX. We'd like to introduce the Crew 10G indicator. Takuya is holding him up. This is a hand crochet origami crane. The Japanese origami, hand crocheted in the United States, and his name is Drug, which is the Russian name for friend. Origami is the Japanese art of folding paper. This is a nod to the unique and deep cultural traditions from which each of us come. While we're from different parts of the world, we are brought together in this bold endeavor, and we represent all of humanity. The folded paper design was also chosen to represent paper airplanes that we made when we were kids, before we were astronauts, when all we had was a dream. And we looked up at the sky and we wondered, what if? It's a symbol that every big accomplishment starts with a quiet dream, and that dreams do come true when you believe in yourself and you listen only to those who believe in you. Crew 10 believes in all of the dreamers. The flag and the number markings on the crane, there's a number 10 on each of its wings and a flag from each one of our countries on the tail. This is a nod to each of our shared experiences as professional pilots. These patches are arranged to look like an airplane. This is a source of deep pride for our crew, because what pilot doesn't like to talk about the fact that they're a pilot? But this also symbolizes our shared culture as astronauts. In the years of training together, we found we have far more in common than we do different. Our zero-G indicator was handmade by a small business owner in the United States. This represents all the hands which created our entire space program, and this rocket and this capsule that we're flying today. It also represents all of the artists and musicians who inspire people to imagine beyond what they can see. Spaceflight is perhaps the most complex endeavor of our time, but it was built one step at a time, by one person at a time. Finally, the origami crane is the international symbol for peace, hope, and healing. Crew 10 hopes to serve as a beacon of hope, a reminder of what humans can accomplish when we see the goodness in one another and we choose to work together toward a common goal. Today, we are united not through common enemy, but through shared optimism and a basic belief in the goodness of humanity. It is far easier to be enemies than it is to be friends. It's easier to break partnerships and relationships than it is to build them. Spaceflight is hard, and success depends on leaders of character who choose the harder right over the easier wrong, and who build programs, partnerships, and relationships. We explore for the benefit of all. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, then go together. Crew 10 chooses to go together in peace because you cannot be great without the greatness of others. Go NASA, go Roscosmos, go JAXA, and go Crew 10.
Dragon SpaceX, we really appreciate those words, Ann. Thanks for introducing.
From NASA astronaut and the Crew 10 commander, Ann McClain. And again, Crew 10 comprised of McClain along with NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers and JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov are now safely in orbit following an approximately 9-minute ride after a liftoff at 4:03 p.m. Pacific, 7:03 p.m. Eastern from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The crew now has an approximately 28-hour journey ahead of them before they reach their destination, the International Space Station. Again, docking is targeted for tomorrow, March 15th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern to the forward-facing port of the station's Harmony module. Between now and then, Dragon will perform a series of burns to catch up with the space station, and that first burn will be taking place around 4:52 p.m. Pacific, 7:52 p.m. Eastern today.
And those were some great words about the zero-G indicator. Very incredible. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years with Dragon. In addition to flying people, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft also enables researchers the opportunity to fly critical science to orbit. Now, so far, SpaceX and Dragon have carried over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit, both to the International Space Station and on our free flyer missions. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing, studies enabled by Dragon and the space station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will be needed for future long-duration exploration missions. Every mission yields critical research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. And flights like today's help us continue to lay the foundation for our future among the stars and continue our mission to make life multiplanetary. Now, we'll be signing off from SpaceX for now, so we're going to send it back to NASA. But before we go, we want to thank NASA for entrusting us with today's mission, and thank you all for being here with us today.
And with that, we're going to end our coverage from Hawthorne until we pick back up with our docking coverage in about 26 hours at 6:45 p.m. Pacific, 9:45 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, March 15th, for that targeted docking to the International Space Station at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern. So for now, thank you for joining us, and back over to you, Jessica and Daryl at the Kennedy Space Center to wrap up today's coverage.
And welcome back to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we just watched Crew 10 lift off from Launch Pad 39A. The crew is now en route to the International Space Station. I'm Daryl Nail. This is NASA astronaut Jessica Meir, who just watched one of her close friends and many friends, Crew 10, go up into space. And I'm wondering what that moment was like for you.
Well, I will tell you, it is a moment that you never forget. I am so excited right now sitting here thinking especially of Nicole and Kirill, because that first time experiencing prolonged weightlessness is something that they will never forget, and they will be talking about it for years and years for the rest of their lives, just like I recounted my stories here tonight. Those words were all so inspirational as well. I love how they unveiled their droog, their origami crane. It really hit on so many important themes tonight, you know, talking about this Japanese art of folding paper, really combining all of the cultures of their crew, the name being a Russian name meaning friend, the origami crane for Japanese culture, all of the flags on the crane handmade by a small business in the U.S. It really highlights so many important elements that I know are so important to the crew and to all of us at NASA and all of the space agencies. Ideally, you know, really in summary, highlighting the representation of peace, of hope, and of healing, and that we are all truly stronger when we work together. So thank you, Anne. Thank you, Crew 10, for those incredible words. I think that there's a lesson there for all of us tonight. We are exploring for the benefit of all.
And Crew 10 believes in all dreamers. Thank you for highlighting the words of Commander Anne McLean as well. Crew 10 will become part of Expedition 73, briefly with 72, but then 73 when they arrive on the space station. NASA's Megan Cruz joins us now with Megan Everett, Deputy Chief Scientist of the International Space Station.
That's right, 2 Megans here, and I want to talk to you about, you know, we obviously have another crew en route to the space station. How is the research that's done on the ISS different from other research at NASA?
Yes, well, first, thank you for having me. It's always my pleasure, and I'm very grateful to get to talk about science and space. And so, like you said, the space station is a national laboratory, and it allows us to look at things in microgravity for extended periods of time. We can put things on the outside of the space station where they experience extreme temperature changes and exposure to radiation in that extreme environment. And we also get these very unique perspectives of the Earth's surface. And so together, these things allow us to look at things like theories in quantum physics and answer questions that we can't answer with laboratories on Earth. We can look at human health and how that we can get astronauts to explore beyond low Earth orbit, as well as promote human health and answer questions related to diseases that we can't do on Earth. And it also allows us to expand commercialization in low Earth orbit by some of our in-space manufacturing. And in addition to this, it's just this really cool collaboration of international partners and scientific cooperation that we see on the space station.
Yeah, obviously a unique platform, and we do all that we can to really utilize it. So how does what we learn on the space station help us here on Earth? Can you give us some examples about that?
Yes, I love that question because one of NASA's big mission objectives is to figure out how we can do science in space to promote human health here on Earth. And one of the things we've been really successful with on ISS is looking at stem cell research and organelles and how those relate to specific diseases like cancer. And we also look at protein crystallization, and so we can grow very uniform crystals in space better than we can on Earth. And these crystals are really important in pharmaceutical drug development. So together we can look at disease progression and how we can better treat those diseases with new pharmaceuticals in space.
That's great. You did also mention human health and researching, you know, what it could mean if we go farther and farther into the universe. How are we doing on that research? What are we learning?
So we've used ISS as a test bed for exploration beyond low Earth orbit for a long time, and we continue to use that, and we will all the way through end of station. And some of the specific things that we look at are how the human responds to long duration exposure to gravity. So we look at exercise countermeasures, at how we can maintain muscle and bone strength. We look at things like food systems for how we keep crew healthy for long periods of time. We have a very robust plant growth program, so we try to optimize crop output by changing things like soil and water exposure to those plants. And we need life support systems for our crew to live in space for long periods of time, so we have a lot of technical demonstrations on the space station looking at how to clean air and water and eliminate waste.
I can really see that you love talking about this. Thank you so much for sharing your passion and for sharing all that's being accomplished through NASA with the research at the ISS, but also other research that we do here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, back to Daryl and Jessica.
All right, thank you very much. And we're about to wrap up coverage here, so why don't we take one last social question from one lucky submitter. Scarlett Sermons asks, how do the astronauts feel looking at Earth from above? And what's that feeling like coming back?
Well, seeing the Earth from above is a very, very exceptional experience, and it's something that I think changes you forever. People have different things to say about this, but I think one message that we do all share is that it gives you this unique understanding for how beautiful our planet is, but mostly how unique and fragile it is. You see this beautiful gem below you and this tiny, tiny band, this thin, tenuous band of an atmosphere that's really supporting all life. And you realize that we need to take care of this planet, that it is one planet and we have to protect it. Secondly, one thing that I really was struck by was seeing how interconnected everything is. You know, you see all of the land masses with no boundaries, you see all the continuous oceans, and you realize how connected everything is, how we really are just one human. We are all here together, in it together, as one. It's easy as humans to have these man-made imposed boundaries that we see delineated on the globe, but for us as astronauts, we realize that we are truly all in this together.
Well said, Jessica, and let's go ahead and end it on that. Right here on NASA Plus, you can follow us along with Crew 10's entire journey to the station by listening to real-time audio commentary of the mission. Just scan the QR code that you see right there at the bottom of your screen, or if you're watching us on your phone, you can just do a screen grab and then click on it later. Crew 10 is on course to arrive at the International Space Station around 11:30 p.m. on Saturday, believe that's going to be March 6th. For 15th, rather, March 15th. On-camera coverage of docking and arrival will resume about 2 hours before it docks on NASA Plus. And of course, that's always a big moment when the crowd, comes together on ISS.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have a lot of patience because you get to ISS, you dock, and then you have to go through these pressure checks to make sure everything's okay, and you're just waiting to get to the other side. And it's an incredibly special moment when you come through the hatch, you float for the first time for 2 of them, and you get big hugs from all of your friends and colleagues that are up there already.
And I was impressed by what Ann says, once they do this together, they are, and you've mentioned this a couple times, like forever brothers and sisters. When she sees those fellow astronauts in the hallway back in Houston, there's always a big smile that comes across her face.
Yeah, it's a bond that you have forever, spending that time in space together, having that shared experience. It's something as astronauts we want to share with our friends and family, how it feels, what it's like, and it's hard when they haven't experienced it. But with other astronauts and other cosmonauts, you have this instant special bond because you all have that shared experience together.
And when they return, they will come full circle with the rest of the astronauts, appropriately so on Pi Day. Just had to get that in there.
One more time, 3:14.
There you go. Well, I want to thank you, Jessica, for joining us. You were here for Crew 7. You did Crew 10, 2 launch attempts. It's a lot of work. We thank you for it. It's been very special. We hope that when you go on your mission and we are watching you and documenting your trip, that you'll throw us a little love somehow towards the camera, give us a wave, something. We will be rooting you on.
Absolutely, Daryl. It's been such a pleasure to be here sharing in the excitement for Crew 10 today. Go Crew 10.
Go Crew 10, go NASA, go SpaceX. And an important reminder about upcoming launches. NASA and SpaceX will return to the ISS in late April with CRS-32, a resupply mission launching from Kennedy, and then Crew 11 several months from now. Again, a huge thanks to all of us, for all of us, from all of us, to you, and to our guests for joining us today. But most importantly, thank you for watching. You can keep up with any Crew 10 updates to this mission using the online resources you see on your screen just there below. For everyone here at NASA and SpaceX, and for Jessica Meir, I'm Daryl Nail. Have a great rest of the day. We leave you now with a look back at highlights from Suit Up to Liftoff. Crew 10 is getting suited up, ready to go. Time now for the traditional card game. Crew 10 walking down the hallway. And here they come, taking their first steps outside as they prepare for their journey to the International Space Station. And we are off. The crew on their way to Space Launch Pad 39A. Ann McClain, Nicole Ayers making their way into their Dragon spacecraft Endurance. And here come our mission specialists down the crew access arm, Takuya Onishi and Kirill Peskov.
There they are rotating back.
Dragon SpaceX side hatches closed. Ignition and liftoff.
9 and Crew 10. And we're continuing to get good call-outs on the first stage performance so far.